Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a simple but honestly a really profound idea that touches everything from jazz music to leadership. We're talking about the power of the unplayed note.
And this whole idea is captured perfectly in this quote from the absolute legend, jazz trumpeter Miles Davis. He said, "It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play." And trust me, as we're about to see, he wasn't just talking about music. I mean, this right here gets to the absolute core of it. The idea that true mastery, whether you're an artist or just living your life, isn't really about piling more stuff on. It's about having the wisdom to know what to leave out.
But okay, if restraint is so powerful, why is it so ridiculously hard to actually practice? Well, that brings us to our first section, which explores what our source calls our allergy to gap.
Think about it for a second. You're on a video call, and there's that awkward silence. What is our first instinct? We rush in, right? We just have to fill it to break that tension.
Or, oh man, a first date. The conversation hits a wall, and suddenly you feel this overwhelming urge to just ramble, to say anything at all.
And this one might be the most universal. You send a text, and minutes just tick by, with no reply. Our entire culture basically trains us to see that gap not as a pause, but as a problem that needs to be fixed, like right now.
So this shows a huge disconnect. Our fear, our gut feeling tells us that silence is this empty void. It almost feels like a little death. But the science? The science tells a completely different story. It says silence is an active process. It's where growth actually happens.
And there's even a specific number tied to this. Just 2 minutes. A 2013 study from Duke University found that only 2 minutes of silence can promote new cell growth in the hippocampus, the part of our brain that's key for memory and learning. So these so-called empty moments, turns out they're some of the most productive ones for our minds.
So, if silence is that powerful, how does that change the way we look at skill and mastery? Well, that brings us to our next section, the power of restraint.
Let's go right back to Miles Davis. In jazz, the space between the notes isn't just dead air. No way. It builds tension, it drives the rhythm, it gives the notes that are played their meaning. The pause literally makes the music.
And it is exactly the same with great writing. An author who spells out every little detail leaves nothing for us, but an author who leaves gaps, they trust our imagination to fill them in, and that pulls us way deeper into the story. This same principle is totally transformative when it comes to leadership. A leader who feels every single silence just dominates the room. But a leader who asks a question and then just embraces the pause, they create a vacuum that invites their team to step forward with their own brilliant ideas.
In the art world, there's actually a term for this, negative space. It's the blank area around an object in a painting. And it might look empty, but it's what defines the subject. It's what gives it shape, focus, and clarity. The unpainted canvas is just as important as the painted parts.
And this idea of an active nothing isn't just for artists. Psychology actually has a name for this exact skill, inhibition control. And it's pretty much what it sounds like, the crucial ability to not act on every single impulse you have.
And the benefits of getting good at this skill are incredible. It's directly linked to higher emotional intelligence, stronger relationships, and way better long-term decision-making. It is a genuine superpower.
So, how do we actually apply this to our own lives? Well, this next section asks us to start thinking of our life as a piece of music, living as composition.
So let's make this personal for a second. I want you to take a good look at your own life, your calendar, your conversations. How much of it is cluttered with what we could call overplaying? This could be saying yes to every single invite just because you feel obligated, or jamming your calendar so full there's literally no space to breathe. It might be that feeling that you have to over-explain your boundaries every time you say no. Or maybe it's this one, continuing to talk when just stopping to listen could change your relationship entirely. And here's the beautiful outcome. When you have the courage to strip away all that noise and the overplaying, what's left behind is the essence, the melody, the part that actually matters. Okay, so you're on board with the idea. How do you actually start doing this? Well, our final section is a playbook for exactly how to practice the pause.
The source lays out a really practical 4-step approach. First, pause before speaking. Just ask yourself, does this truly need to be said right now? Second, curate your commitments. Start treating your time like a museum curator. Every no makes room for a much more powerful yes. Third, leave space. When you ask a question, really resist that urge to jump in. You'll be amazed at what people share in the silence. And finally, savor the gaps. Learn to find joy in those quiet, unplanned moments in your day.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer, and to one final, really powerful idea.
It all comes back to this: playing all the notes, filling every moment. Look, anyone can do that. That's just noise. The real art, the real mastery, is in the courage it takes to be silent. The courage to leave something unsaid and just trust the power of that empty space.
So we're left with this one final question. We're all wired to think our next big achievement has to be an action, something we need to do. But what if your next breakthrough, your next great act, isn't something you add to your life, but something you have the wisdom and the courage to take away?